The Bible says, be not deceived. Whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap.
All right, it's 4 p.m. on Wall Street. Do you know where your money is?
How much should I invest?
I really looking for some direction.
Should I hold on to my house as an investment for my future?
What should we do to have money that we're putting aside?
Welcome to Financial Issues, where we align reality with truth. Conservative talk radio you can count on. Financial issues that you need to know.
We face a disintegrating economy, a weakened defense, and an energy policy based on the sharing of scarcity. We will simply apply to government the common sense that we all use in our daily lives.
Now, here's your host, Dan Celia.
Good morning. Welcome back to Financial Issues. I'm Dan Celia. It's great to be here. And we're going to do something a little different today and on the next Monday and the next one after that and so on and so forth. We're going to have a little bit of a different lineup on Monday mornings. What we're going to do on Monday mornings, something I know is going to be interesting to everybody, I'm going to do my usual commentary and my economic data that's coming out for the week and talk about some of the economic news that is important in my commentary as we head into a new week. And I'm going to do that in the second segment. First segment, on Mondays, we are going to go to the American Family Association's Director of Governmental Affairs, Sandy Rios. Now, there are some of you, not many, well, maybe a fair amount of you that don't know who Sandy is because of right now Biz TV and 50, 60 other stations that pick up this program that you might not have access to Sandy Rios in the morning. She is the morning drive host at American Family Radio. She's been a Fox News contributor for a very long time, and we are blessed to have her here this morning. I'm going to bring Sandy in on a regular basis to talk about some of the upcoming pressing issues from a political standpoint going on in Washington. And I talk about those issues as they relate to the economy and our economic future. But I think that, I know Sandy does, I know I do, want my audience as well as all the voting population to be informed about some things that will make you a better voter. And we're going to bring Sandy in here to do that on Monday mornings. So Sandy Rios is with us. Sandy, welcome.
Good morning, Dan, and thank you very much. It's great to join you this morning. You know what I'd like to do? I just want to ask, I want to pick your brain on financial issues. I'm going to turn the table on you because I got some questions.
Oh, boy, don't we all?
Man, we were talking about that jobs report this morning on my show.
Oh,
I got to tune in and see what you have to say about that.
Well, I was just telling Devin before the program, I did so many interviews Friday on that. And one Saturday morning, and I said, I just got finished saying to Devin, I don't want to talk about the job numbers. I'm tired of it. But
come on.
But we will do that sometime, anytime. You want another perspective on that for what it's worth. I'm happy to do that.
All right. Well,
Sandy, there's a lot going on in Washington, and I know the Supreme Court stuff. It's very interesting. Years ago, it seems like years ago, a long time ago, when the first time that the president took a line item veto, I call it, on what part of the law applies and what part of the law doesn't apply. I was very irate over that, and I continue to talk about it. And primarily, not just the president, abuse of power, but the fact that there weren't enough Republicans, in my point of view, standing up very vocally against that. Now, you're much more in tune with that than I am, but right now it seems like so many things hitting the Supreme Court this week. Tell us some of that.
Well, just by way of background, let me give you a quote. You probably heard this over the weekend. Ted Cruz was making a speech, and he accused the Obama administration of being lawless. Mm-hmm. He says when he disagrees with the law, he simply refuses to comply with it. And I'm going to get to the Supreme Court decision in a minute, but just to kind of make that point, there were thousands of regulations that were passed this year, 3,659 new regulations by the feds. And the CEI's Wayne Cruz actually says that the bureaucrats and regulators are now making most of the laws. And his quote, Dan, is, Congress is so 1789 after all. And so, the executive branch is really taking over governing everything. And another example of that would be just December the 20th, a federal judge decides in Nevada that the law passed by the people of Nevada that said that marriage is between one man and one woman in 2005 just, doesn't apply anymore. So 1,000 people rushed in to get married. This is a judge that was appointed by President Obama. Sonia Sotomayor puts a stay on that because that's kind of a problem. One judge says that when there is a state law. But Eric Holder, Friday night, you may recall, made this big announcement that the 1,000 people who rushed to marry after that federal judge's decree will now get federal benefits. So says Eric Holder. It hasn't been adjudicated. The thing has not been settled, and yet the Justice Department rushes in to decide for Utah that those 1,000 people will get federal benefits. But that is just kind of an idea, Dan, of how out of control the executive branch has become. So a case is making its way. It will be heard at the Supreme Court this morning, and this is over recess appointments. Mm-hmm. You probably know that presidents have always used recess appointments. They're supposed to get the advice and consent of the Senate, the presidents are, for their appointments. But they can, if a Senate is not in session, they are allowed in some cases, if the need is pressing, to make appointments that they feel they have to.
And that's a legitimate recess.
That's
what
right.
You just described. Go ahead.
And there are other things. Like I said, it has to be like there has to be some sort of need for that. Like,
right.
I need this person, and Senate is not in session, so I must appoint them. So that's been the precedent for this. But now this president, you may recall, because this was in the news a lot a couple of years ago, the National Labor Relations Board is a very controversial body of people who have been making their determinations all labor-friendly. The appointments to the board have been, pretty hair up on the back of your neck, radical leftists, and so they've been coming out with those typical decisions. And the president decided to make all of these appointments when the Senate was technically still in session. And so this was unprecedented, Dan. And as a result of that, there are some people whose names I can give you. They were unknown to me, but they've brought suit against the Obama administration for doing this, saying that the executive branch is out of control with its power. And so it's really a mess, but what else is new? It's going to be heard this morning. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce is joining in on behalf of, the name is Noel Canning, saying that the NLRB operated without a quorum for well over a year, causing confusion for both employers and employees, and perhaps throwing out many of their determinations. But it's all up to the court today. Mm-hmm. And so people are guesstimating, people who should know, that they think the court's going to come down against the administration on this, which will be interesting.
It will be interesting because that's going to open up the door, right, to a whole lot of similar cases.
Well, here's the thing. In the interim, with Harry Reid changing the rules in the Senate, that whole process of needing 60 votes for approval in the Senate is gone for presidential nominees. So really, the gateway has been completely blown open for the president to appoint anyone in any position that he wants. And actually, I wish I had the name in front of me, but it's an unusual name, and it's the appointment to head the Civil Rights Division in the Department of Justice now is a radical leftist who defended a man who killed a FBI official. And so this is another controversial appointment, but I don't think we can stop it. This is what I'm talking. And so the barriers to him being able to appoint just anyone that he wants without the consent of the Senate has just gone out the door. With the left having more than 50 votes in the Senate, he's going to get anything that he wants, and he is proceeding. It's just become a nightmare, Dan. It really has.
And we're only seeing the tip of the iceberg then, Sandy, because if the Supreme Court, I'm assuming, you tell me, but if the Supreme Court does not rule in favor of the people, then isn't that going to be just a license for so much more of these abuses of power?
There's no question about it. And as this guy from CEI pointed out, the president, remember, has already said, he said this publicly several times, and if Congress doesn't act, we'll do something. We'll do
Right.
something. We're going to do it anyway.
Right.
And he said that publicly. So I think, with the brazenness with which they are coming after the marriage issue alone, doing everything they can to undermine citizen referendums, marriage amendments, it really is law. Deciding, Dan, that they would not enforce the Defense of Marriage Act. Just deciding. The Justice Department's not going to enforce that. Passed by both houses of Congress, signed by President Clinton in 96. We don't like that law. We're not going to enforce it. We're not going to defend it in the courts. The House of Representatives, had to hire a legal firm to defend it at the Supreme Court, and they lost that battle because the Supreme Court decided that it was okay for the administration to be lawless on that issue. So I think the one thing that many people have not really let settle into their minds, and if you study the left, Dan, we know that one of their objectives is chaos. Chaos is something that they want. Chaos, disorder, confusion. That's why groups like Acorn, way back in New York City, a number of years ago when they became an organization, tried to destroy the welfare system of New York State by pretending to care about poor people and stirring up people to enroll in record numbers, not to help poor people, but to overwhelm and destroy the welfare system. That is a strategy, and this gets really obscure, but it's a strategy of the left that has a name. It's called the Cloward-Piven strategy of manufactured crisis. Overwhelm the system in order to destroy it. And I think when we look at what's happening, whether it's our national defense policy or domestic policy, food stamps being, pushed in Mexico to overwhelm the system and destroy it, that is the way the far left operates. The idea is to create enough chaos that they will rush in to help a desperate people and thereby take power. And that's how bleak it is. And I think that's what's happening.
And it is bleak, and it is, and unfortunately, we are allowing the strategy to work, and we're getting less and less able to stop so much of this, as you pointed out earlier. And that's what is so disturbing to me, and I know so many other people as I travel about. It's very interesting. Today, I speak in New York City to a board of a secular company, as I do that often. And I always warn them that as I speak in reference to leadership and moving forward in America, I've got to bring in the Bible. I've got to bring in my handbook on ethics, morality, and leadership. And, it's interesting because more and more boards are saying, hey, that's fine. We can all use a little bit of that, or they say something about it. And when we look at, you talk about marriage, and we often talk about the murder of the millions of babies, and the moral depravity, and the working to get God out of everything, not just out of school, but out of everything that we do in life, will continue to destroy this nation, destroy companies, corporate America, as well as individual families. And it's sad, and we need a hurry-up attitude for so many people in corporate America and government to understand that we've got to get back to the founding principles.
Dan, I think people are just, I find that a lot of people that I know in business, very successful, are really naive in many ways about the political realities. I don't understand that, but they are not fully informed. And I'll tell you a story that you may know. I was in Chicago doing radio, and there was a big article in the Chicago Tribune about a Chinese businessman. As you well know, the free markets have opened up in China, and China's, as we all know, become very successful financially and is buying up America, as a matter of fact. But a tycoon in China who had become very successful, there's also, inside of China, of course, this great Christian movement.
Yeah.
Had come to the United States to study Christianity and Christian business principles, because he felt like that was the missing element
Sandy,
in Chinese business.
Hold the thought. I'm going to hold you over for this break if you don't mind.
Okay.
And we'll finish that thought. You're listening to American Family Radio Network, Biz Television, many other networks. We sure appreciate all of you. We're going to be right back. We're going to have a little bit more from Sandy Rios. Then we're going to get to your calls eventually here this morning. Financial Issues. We'll be right back.